Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unlocking a mystery that's literally hiding in plain sight. If you've ever traveled internationally from the UK, you've likely held an everyday object that actually holds the key to understanding a profound, centuries-old psychological phenomena. We're going to trace a fascinating line from medieval battlefields, through legendary poetry, and straight into the psychology of modern politics. And the crazy part? It all starts with the cover of a passport.
Okay, let's dive into this. Our central mystery today was actually sparked by a highly relatable observation, pulled straight from a recent online forum discussion. A user was looking at their UK passport and asked a really logical question. Why on earth does a modern British passport prominently feature French text? Especially when you consider that the Normans conquered England almost 1,000 years ago. I mean, shouldn't they have updated the language by now?
And the internet, of course, delivered. One user cheekily replied, "Many schools have a Latin motto, and they left 1,600 years ago. Romanes unt domus." Now, beyond that being a brilliant Monty Python reference, it's a really great point. History leaves incredibly stubborn linguistic fingerprints on our modern lives. Sometimes we keep things around just because they look official, right? But in this specific case, those French words carry incredible historical baggage.
So to actually solve our passport paradox, we have to look closely at the UK Royal Coat of Arms stamped in gold right there on the cover. If you peel back the layers of that intricate design, you're going to find not one, but two very specific French phrases. Down on the bottom ribbon, we have Dio et mon droit, and encircling the center shield is Honi soit qui mal y pense. Let's break these down one by one.
Section 1. God and My Right, the Royal Battle Cry. This brings us to our first historical investigation, uncovering the literal origins of that primary royal motto.
Now, what's absolutely fascinating here is that Dieu et mon droit, which translates to God and my right, wasn't originally meant to be just some polite political statement. Historically, this was a literal claim to divine favor shouted out on the battlefield. It was basically a way of a king saying, "I am meant to be here, and the higher powers are backing my sword."
Just look at how this timeline unfolds. We kick things off in 1066 with the Norman conquest, which forcefully embedded the French language into the English ruling class. Then, fast forward to 1198, King Richard I, during the Battle of Gisors, actually yells "Dieu est mon droit" as a battle cry against the French, claiming God gave him the victory. By the 15th century, King Henry V makes it the official, actually scratch that, he permanently cemented it as the official royal motto of England. So a singular bloodied battle cry evolved into a permanent fixture of national identity.
Moving right along to Section 2, the Order of the Garter, a chivalric mystery. But that only solves half of our passport mystery. Let's look at that second phrase and take a deep dive into the strange world of medieval honor. Honi soit qui mal y pense, which translates to "shame on him who thinks evil of it." This is the official motto of the Most Noble Order of the Garter, the highest and oldest order of chivalry in the United Kingdom. And I really want you to pay close attention to that first word, shame, because this concept of shame is going to become the absolute key to everything we discuss from here on out.
So how exactly did a garter become a symbol of top-tier knighthood? Well, historians actively debate the exact origin, but there are a few really colorful legends. One famous story says the Countess of Salisbury dropped her garter while dancing at a court ball. When the courtiers snickered at her, King Edward III chivalrously picked it up, strapped it to his own leg, and scolded them with the phrase, "Shame on him who thinks evil of it." Another legend says Richard the Lionheart tied blue leather thongs around his knight's legs to unite them during the Crusades. But whether it's about a king protecting a lady's dignity or soldiers bonding in battle, these legends all revolve around two core concepts: tightly bound loyalty and the aggressive avoidance of public embarrassment.
And we can trace the institutionalization of this whole idea to a very specific year, 1348. That's when King Edward III officially founded the Order of the Garter. By doing so, he quite literally cemented this complex stance of shame, honor, and loyalty right into the bedrock of British institutions.
Section 3. Sir Gawain's Secret Shame. Let's move to and see how this builds into something even deeper, transitioning from royal history into human psychology through the lens of a famous medieval story.
You might have heard of the famous 14th century poem called Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Well, in the only surviving handwritten manuscript of this text, an anonymous scribe jotted down the Order of the Garter's motto, "Honi soit qui mal y pense," at the very end. Why? Because scholars view this medieval poem not just as an entertaining story about magic and knights, but as a profound, agonizing study on guilt. and that guilt is intricately tied to the order's famous motto.
Let's walk through Gawain's incredible narrative arc here, because it's pretty wild. A magical green knight shows up and challenges the court. Gawain only steps up to take this deadly challenge because he sees King Arthur blushing with shame when no one else volunteers. Later in the story, out of sheer self-preservation, Gawain secretly accepts a magical green girdle that promises to protect his life, completely breaking a bargain he made with a host. When the Green Knight ultimately reveals he knows about this cowardice, Gawain literally shrinks with shame. But in a fascinating twist, when he returns home, King Arthur's court decides to adopt Gawain's green girdle not as a mark of disgrace, but as a badge of honor. It just goes to show even the most honorable knight can momentarily slip into shamelessness to save his own skin.
Which brings up a really vital psychological question, right? What permits someone like Sir Gawain, literally the best of the best, to suddenly act as though shame doesn't exist? The poem offers a really sharp answer to this: entitlement. Right before Gawain makes his dishonorable choice, he's told his destination is close by. He prematurely declares, "My quest is accomplished." This breeziness, this feeling of "I've already won," allowed him to temporarily ignore the moral consequences of his actions. He felt entitled to his victory, so he just shed his shame.
And that brings us to part 4, the weapon of shamelessness. Now we're going to connect this 14th century literature directly to our modern era, examining the sociology of shame in the 21st century.
And this brilliantly illustrates a really complex psychological theory. In the poem, Gawain wears a pentacle star on his shield. Scholars suggest the lines of this star actually represent how shame moves. It doesn't just evaporate into thin air. When a powerful, enfranchised figure casts off their own shame, that displaced shame gains this inexorable momentum. It acts like a sharp point, bouncing off the shameless person and lodging collaterally into the people watching. Basically, if you refuse to feel your own shame, you inadvertently weaponize it against your observers.
To see how this applies today, we can look at an incredibly interesting essay from Public Books. The author of the source material draws a direct parallel between Sir Gawain's fleeting sense of entitlement and the shamelessness of modern political figures. Specifically, the essay examines the political climate following the 2016 election and Donald Trump. The author argues that in the modern era, powerful people frequently exaggerate their successes while simultaneously refusing to exhibit any shame for their moral failures, and in doing so, they weaponize that absence of shame against the public.
The essayist Sita Chaganti hits the nail on the head when she writes, "When a powerful person casts off shame, it lodges itself within those who would resist him." The author describes feeling personally pierced by the shame that political leaders simply refuse to feel. This is a fascinating framework for understanding political burnout, isn't it? When leaders act shamelessly, the public ends up absorbing the anxiety and accountability that those leaders have discarded. We, the observers, take on the heavy burden of their missing conscience.
Which leaves us with a pretty profound realization about the world we live in. That golden crest on a UK passport isn't just a relic of Norman conquerors or medieval knights dancing at a ball. It's a monument to the complex, constantly shifting nature of power and honor. So I'll leave you with this provocative thought. In a world where modern leaders increasingly shed their shame as a tactic, how much of that burden are you unconsciously carrying for them? Thank you so much for exploring the source material with us on this explainer. Keep questioning what's right in front of you, and we'll see you next time.